Good evening and welcome to our panel conversation tonight with this is Looking for Lilith Theatre Company. We're thrilled to have you with us tonight. And this panel conversation is a part of our Kentucky Suffrage Project. And we are having a Facebook event every Wednesday night at 7:20. And tonight we have fabulous panelists here that are women who are or have been elected officials and work in the government to share some of their experiences as women in politics. And I'm going to pass it over to my co-artistic director, Shannon Woolley Allison, to say more about our panel.
Thank you. Hello, Lilith family, and hello, Suffrage TV fans. If you've been following along, you've been seeing each week an episode about the suffrage movement, specifically in Louisville 100 years ago and further back. But this week, in between episode 4 and 5, we're bringing it into the present day. We very much know that universal suffrage was not gained in 1920 and is still not gained today. There are still citizens and community members that do not have the franchise. And the franchise is still deeply important for the women of the United States. So we're thrilled to come from the past into the present tonight and have some conversation about that. I am thrilled that my dear friend Mari Mujica, who I have known both as an artist and a dear friend for many years, is going to facilitate the conversation tonight. For those of you that don't know, Mari was recently awarded the Kentucky Foundation for Women Sally Bingham Award for this year, which is, pretty awesome and so well deserved. So I am going to turn it over to Mari to introduce our panelists. And Mari, I see your message. I'm on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you everyone for being here. So we have an amazing group of women here, and I'm honored to be the moderator of this conversation. We have Joni Jenkins. There's some problem with the sound. Joni is a House Democratic leader, and she's been a state representative in Kentucky since 1995. She really deserves our applause. And next to Joni, at least in my screen, and they moved, Tina Ward-Pugh. Too. And Tina, of course, was a council member in District 9 in Louisville, Kentucky, and is now the director of the Louisville Metro Office for Women.
Thank you.
And next is Attica Scott, Representative Attica Scott. Began serving Kentucky House District 41, which is a huge district, in January of 2017, and she serves on the Education, Elections, Constitutional Amendments, and Intergovernmental Affairs, and Veterans, Military Affairs, and Public Protection Committees, as well as the Budget Review Subcommittee on Primary and Secondary Education and Workforce Development. And I have to mention this, Representative Attica Scott's proudest accomplishment is being a mom to advocate an Ashanti. Ashanti definitely follows in her steps as an activist and thoughtful citizen. I cannot wait until she runs for office herself. And you can follow Representative Scott on her Instagram and Twitter at Attica Scott the number 4 Kentucky, just KY. And she provides great education. So welcome everybody in our panel. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to pose a question, and whoever feels inclined to answer first, go ahead, and then we can, the next panelist can also add her 2 cents or 2 million. And we'll do like that. So the first question I have for the panelists is, what led you to run for office?
I'll start. I got involved. I'm a social worker by vocation or profession, and got involved in some of the local elections around 1988, 89, and 90, electing women judges to the bench. It was clear to me that having women on the bench had different outcomes, it felt like, and at least a different approach to service and decision making, and never aspired to be in office, but had the opportunity after that to work to help elect Alderman Scotty Green. And when he was his legislative assistant, and when he unexpectedly left to go with his wife to Atlanta, I had been there for more than 2 years and enjoyed my service as it was, and decided to run. So it was really more about an opportunity, but I really felt it was a way that I could serve my country and my community, so I took the plunge and ran for office and won. That was in 1998 when I served on the Board of Aldermen and then in on the Metro Council. So it was opportunity, but it was also duty, and wanted to participate in the conversation.
I'm happy to jump in and just share that for me, the first time I ran for office was actually for school board, Jefferson County Public Schools Board of Education, 10 years ago, 2010. Both of my kids were in JCPS. I'm a graduate of JCPS. And for about a year or so, some girlfriends and I, mostly Black and Latinx women, were sitting around our kitchen tables, having conversations, complaining that we didn't feel like folks in local, state, and national office really reflected our values and our vision. And at one point we decided we've got to stop complaining and we have to do something about it. So what are we going to do about it? And we decided one of us should run for office. And we were trying to figure out who it should be, because, some of my friends have experienced life, and sometimes those life experiences are judged negatively by people. And so they didn't feel like they were in a position to be able to run. So they all looked at me and they said, we will put all of our energy and resources and support into you running for school board. And that's what they did. I was actually going through the first class of Emerge Kentucky at the same time. So I was learning a lot about running for office while running for office. And although I didn't win that race, there were 5 of us in that race. And I actually came in second. Never run for office before, but we had a really good ground campaign. Even though, I lost that race, I didn't give up, because I was never in it for me anyway. It was for the people that I care about. It's like Councilwoman Ward-Pugh said, it was about service to community. And so I stayed involved. I stayed active. And I'll just add that a year later, I was appointed to Louisville Metro Council. And I will always remember Councilman Britt Ackerson, when he nominated me, said she was here when she didn't have to be. And so I think that's really important for folks to remember, that folks, they watch, they're paying attention. Show up for your community, show up for the people who need you the most, and people will notice that and they will see it.
Yeah. Well, I don't like this question because I don't have a great, something hit me and I decided to run for office. I was young. I was interested in politics, actually more than government. I was working for local government at the time. And the seat that I later won was an open seat. The incumbent was not running again. And it just sounded like fun to me. I won my primary in 1994, so before a lot of you were born, by 10 votes. And so I always tell people when I have this question about, what made you run? The question I think for me that I want to answer is why I continue to run. I was young and idealistic, and I came into the Kentucky House of Representatives when there were about 5 women. And very few people of color. The Democrats I'm a Democrat, and the Democrats had a huge majority, and they pretty much told the 4 women Democrats to go sit over there and, look pretty. Yeah. And I saw how marginalized people are treated in state government. I saw how little voices women had, people of color, people who are in the shadows so much. And I learned a lot my first term. I grew up a lot my first term, and I continue to run because, for a poor state, Kentucky sends the richest people to the General Assembly. Yeah. And there were voices there that weren't being heard. And I felt like I had an obligation to speak for those folks that didn't always have a seat at the table.
Thank you so much. And I don't think you should feel bad about the first time you ran. I think you were very brave, if I may say so.
It was an adventure.
Yeah. So the second question is, what does the right to vote mean to you? Who do you identify as most at risk for disenfranchisement at this moment? And how do we as a society advocate for them?
We're all so shy tonight. And I know these other 2 women, and they're not shy at all. I'll jump in here. I think in the years that I've been in the General Assembly, every single year we have had legislation that's been introduced to grant folks who have felonies, who have been convicted of felonies, but who have served their time and are no longer allowed the right to vote even after they have served their time, paid their fines, whatever. So I look at that group. There's been some movement there. The governor had an executive order that some of us, me included, didn't think went far enough. So, when I'm campaigning for myself or somebody else and I knock on a door and somebody says, I'd love to vote for you, but because I did something stupid when I was 19 or 20, I can't do that. And, I think we over-police everybody, but especially people of color and poor people. And all of us, I think, have had times where we made poor decisions or were in difficult situations. And I'm certainly not the same person I was when I was 19 or 20, thank God. And, so I look at that group. And also, when we look at some of the legislations that's been passed in Kentucky and other states that, you have to have photo ID or you have to do this or you have to do that. And it's hoops that if you're not, middle class, possibly white, some of those hoops are really, really hard to jump through. And I see a big trend about, really discouraging people of color, women, and folks that are, trying to get out of poverty, that I see a lot of discouragement for them to vote. And, I'm really excited about early voting, but, there are 4 places in Kentucky, there are 4 places in Jefferson County where you can early vote. And, I can get in my car and drive to the fairgrounds or to other parts of the town to vote, but not everybody has that same privilege and that same opportunity. So I'm talking way too much. But this is Ruthie B. Ginsper, who is joining us right now.
So I'll jump in and say I certainly have always appreciated voting and the importance of voting. but over the course of the last almost 4 years now, it has become crystal clear to me that voting is a sacred right, but it should also be viewed, I believe, as a sacred responsibility. You can't have the right and not exercise the responsibility and expect things to change. Voting is how we organize ourselves, but more importantly, it's how we dream about who we want to be towards that more perfect union. And yet the only way we can get there is through elected leadership in our government. There are organizations, nonprofits, and really good people who are all working at the same time. But at the end of the day, it's your vote or your choice to not vote that gives us who our elected leadership is. And so, you know, I think Sadiqa Reynolds said in a tweet over the weekend, you know, vote like your freedom's at stake. And I've tweeted back, because it is. Vote because Ida B. Wells and Susan Look Avery and Fannie Lou Hamer and all those others, some of them died for our right to vote, some of them never even getting to vote themselves. And so the way that I can honor that and their sacrifice is to do my duty and vote. And I would add, especially when my candidate isn't the winner, because my vote is not about me. My vote is about us, and my vote is about our community. And so while it may be difficult, and I've had to swallow hard, especially in recent years, to do that, but it's, as I think, as Representative Scott said, it was never about me. It's about my community and my country. And so voting, I think, is critical in how we want to move and who we want to be as people from this time forward.
Yeah, and for me, voting is one part of how we build a representative democracy, and it's an opportunity for us to shape that representative democracy, and it's an opportunity for us to make sure that we are challenging and holding people accountable to us before we cast our ballot. And I feel like we feel it even more right now as Black folks, and I'm going to speak particularly for Black people, because for so many years we have had ourselves walked over and feet on our necks and knees on our necks and told we just have to vote for whomever the majority has decided we should vote for without question. And that is not fair, it's not healthy, and it's not the way that we should function as a democracy. We have every right to want to see ourselves reflected in a racial justice agenda. We have every right to say that we're going to vote for people who center us and our priorities. And then when we don't have anyone who's doing that, then we have to turn back around and look at our community as a whole and ask, why do you continue to lift up people who are not supporting us? Why do you continue to lift up people who are not centering the people who deal with face down oppression every single day? That is how we build a representative democracy. It's not comfortable. It's not friendly, but it's the way that we have to move forward, because we won't begin to right some of these injustices that we have in our society until we have people who clearly either understand what we are facing or are open to the conversation about how can I be different? How can I be better? How can I make sure that I'm the kind of person who's representing everyone in Louisville or everyone in Kentucky and not just a select group of people? So for me, voting is making those demands clear and living those demands fully. And voting is also saying, yes, I'm going to vote for these individuals on the ballot in 2020, but in 2022, my name is going to be on that ballot, and you're going to vote for me. So I hope that folks turn their vote into running for office as well.
Oh, wonderful. So, anybody wants to add anything to this? I think everything has been said, but that was really powerful input. So, within your elected or political position, and in Tina's case, as when you were elected, how do you see institutional patriarchy and white supremacy manifesting in this moment, and what needs to happen to counter this? So
okay, I'll jump.
Okay.
It's in some way reflective of my current position, but last night was part of an audience with, they had Dr. Robert Jones on. It's not One West Louisville, it's with Reverend Dr. Cosby, their evening show, and it was about, of course, religion and racism, and particularly timing of a call for Southern Seminary to make some significant changes. I'm a graduate of Southern Seminary in 1991 BF, and I say that because it was before the fall of the seminary, when Dr. Roy Honeycutt was still the president, and it made a difference. It's when we were turning out social workers in this community. And so I grew up a Southern Baptist, and racism is prevalent, and we need to be talking about our family members and those who hang on to that, disguised in their racism. And so one of my challenges is finding my voice in challenging that very institution, that is has caused me such pain over the years, but also needs to atone for, at least perhaps provide reparations in scholarships and funds outside of their own students, but to the larger community of those who've primarily been affected. So religious institutions and educational institutions are really important. It feels like a couple of the books that Dr. Jones has read, that I wrote, that I'm reading now, White Too Long, just started that. You can see, as they've mentioned, our elected officials don't represent our community at any level. And we need to do what we can to change that, and that's lifting as we go. So I don't know. I just think that being in elective office is challenging, because while you have a perspective, and while you are, representing people, you're also representing the people who didn't vote for you. And so there are some defining issues, but most of the time you're trying to bring everybody forward so that you can have that community change all along. And so racism is pervasive in politics, in religious institutions at every level, and regretfully in my own former denomination of Southern Baptists.
I will say here to everything you just said, Councilwoman Ward-Pugh, and I will add that for me, patriarchy and white supremacy are deeply intertwined. And it's so very difficult for me to see how they are separate from one another, especially right now when I think about the movement for justice for Breonna Taylor. And as you said, Councilwoman, at every single level of local and state and federal government, our decision makers are white men who are making decisions about Black bodies. And so patriarchy and white supremacy are deeply intertwined, and they're some of the most difficult conversations for us to have in our city and across this Commonwealth, but we have to have them. We have to talk about what goes on in your house, the People's House in Frankfurt. We have to talk about whose bills get heard and whose doesn't. It's almost always that the Legislative Black Caucus's bills don't get heard and the Women's Caucus bills don't get heard. But there have been some of our white men colleagues in the Democratic Caucus in Frankfurt who've had their bills heard in the 3.5 going on 4 years that I've been in Frankfurt. But I don't go and have, cigars to play golf with or hang out with and have beers with the white men who get to make the decisions about whose bills will or will not be heard. At the local level, it's really important for people to pay attention to Louisville Metro Council and who is setting the agenda and making the decisions. It's important that people get involved and engage and hold the mayor accountable as he is making decisions about what will happen with our movement for justice for Breonna Taylor, a movement that is led by Black people and mostly Black women. And so all of it's connected. And I will say this, that connectivity can be broken down. Patriarchy can be dismantled. White supremacy can be dismantled by the people. So, for example, this week, Metro Council, one of its committees, Labor and Economic Development, met to talk about the Fraternal Order of Police contract that the mayor and the FOP have come up with and agreed to. But because of the pressure that was applied by the people, they have tabled that FOP contract conversation. That didn't happen because they are benevolent, because they just voted in June to give the police more money. It didn't happen because they're benevolent. It happened because the people applied pressure, and the people will have to keep doing that if we want to dismantle the system of patriarchy and the system of white supremacy that maintains institutional and systemic racism.
I should have remembered not to follow Representative Scott when I talked. I broke my number one rule. I have the luxury of looking at Frankfurt from over 25 years and the changes that have happened. The House Democratic Caucus, which when I started out had like 4 women in it, now is exactly half female. We have the first leadership team. I'm the first female leader of any caucus in Frankfurt, and it took until 2020 for that to happen. Our leadership, I'm the leader. We have an African-American man who is our caucus chair, and we have a white woman from Eastern Kentucky, Representative Angie Hatton. Representative Derek Graham, I'm sorry, I didn't know if I said his name, is our caucus chair. Representative Angie Hatton is our whip. Representative Scott has been there through some transition, but I will tell you the way leadership runs now for the House Democrats is very different than it did when I first came, and we were in the majority, so we had 5 leaders, and 5 white men got behind closed doors and decided everything that was going to happen. They decided what bills were going to be heard. They decided who was going to be in chair of committees, who were going to be on those committees, who got the good bills, who got bills that didn't get heard. And I'm not perfect, but I have tried in the last 2 years being in leadership, first as whip and now as leader, to make sure that everything in our caucus is caucus driven and that everything is transparent, and all the information I have, I share with the caucus. So things can change and things can be different, but it came because the people of Kentucky voted for 19 women to join the Democratic caucus. And here in Louisville, we have a great opportunity for Louisville and Jefferson County to send 12 Democratic women to the Kentucky House. We will Attica will no longer be the only woman of color, the only African-American woman, I misspoke there, the only African-American woman, because we are adding Pamela Stevenson to our caucus. Representation matters, and I think that's the first step in breaking down those barriers that women and minorities see.
And if I could, Mari, I would just add to what Leader Jenkins just said, to say that one of the reasons I voted for her to be in leadership is because when I needed to have tough conversations about racism and sexism that I was experiencing in Frankfurt, I could go to her and know that as a white woman, she was going to have those conversations with white men, right? Because that's just not a conversation that I was able to have. And so she was willing to do that. And so I knew that a vote for her in leadership would be a vote for representation for me. It would be a vote for someone who was going to fight for my agency in a place where I was the only one. And so, yes, representation matters. It makes a difference to cast your vote for people you know will be there for and with you and who will fight for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's such an important point. How do we connect with each other, and how do we speak when we have that little bit more privilege for those who don't, and with. So thank you to both of you for that. I've gotten a question from so I think I'm going to go out, and also from Gretchen Hunt. So, well, let me say this, since we are on this topic right now of representation. She's saying, for Democratic women who are interested in running for office, please consider applying for Emerge Kentucky training program. And we have an amazing representative of that program in Representative Scott. Applications are due November 7th. So I'll just mention that, and let's go to the last question that we had planned, and then we will take the questions from the audience who are participating via Facebook. And the question is, how can we as citizens actively participate in the political process beyond voting?
Running for office.
Yeah.
Running for office, or helping someone that you really believe in run for office as well. You can do that with donations of money, with donations of time, with offering to babysit. I think one of the, we don't see many women who have young children running for office, especially on the state level. We need to change a lot of things to make that more welcoming for young men and women who have young families, because that's an important voice that we're starting to have. We have Representative Josie Raymond, who actually gave birth during session. And you know what? We made accommodations for that. It's interesting. We would not make accommodations for her to vote remotely. But when COVID hit, we very quickly turned on a dime to make a way for folks to vote. So I think, one of my goals for the General Assembly is to make it more family friendly, so that those are voices that are not missing in the debate.
So last night, again, the Reverend Dr. Cosby mentioned that one of the simplest things that he heard when asked a similar question was what Governor Beshear said. He said, I can listen, and I can learn, and I can act. And, not everybody is cut out for elective office, but as Representative Jenkins and Scott have mentioned, there are all kinds of ways to volunteer. I don't have a lot of money, but every now and again I give my $4 to, women who are running across the whole country. And, I got this wonderful, what looked to be a handwritten postcard from somebody in my running for office today, that said, voting's important. We hope you will take the time to vote. It was signed, it was like, and so I took the time to read it. It caught my attention. So there are ways that you can connect with, you can read, you can Google anybody, anything you want to do, and you can find them and connect with them. And one of the things that we talk about is most important is building a network and utilizing that network, because not everybody has time to know what we need to know or want to know about the candidates running, or what our opportunities are to support the candidates. So if you have a friend or a family member or a co-worker who is active and you trust them and you all share the same values, have that conversation. There are ways you can make phone calls, you can give rides. A friend of mine has put a plastic piece of plexiglass between her front and back seats and signed up, and she's wiping it down after everybody she gives a ride to the poll for. She signed up, she lives in Clifton, and she's signed up and she's given rides from the Louisville Urban League because she understands the importance of what's going on. And she's in her 60s, and so it's not a given, but there are all kinds of ways that we can participate, and we should participate. And if I might just add on, because I realized, in talking about this, it's like Representative Scott said, you have to show up. Decisions are made by the people who show up. If you can't find somebody who agrees with you and get them to show up, but, one of the ways, it's the citizenry that actually puts and keeps the pressure on those elected officials and organizations that are doing the work. And one of the things I've said is I'm not going to be in this office for long. And so I just want to say to the world, a white woman should not be the director of the Metro Louisville Office for Women when I'm no longer there. We need to demand that a woman of color be the director of the Office for Women. So I'm just going to put that out there. It's one of the ways we can be a part of changing those institutions.
And I'll just add a couple of things. One, amplifying what Gretchen put in the chat. If you're a Democratic woman in Kentucky and you are thinking about, ever thought about running for office, apply to Emerge Kentucky. It is the premier training program for Democratic women here in our Commonwealth who want to run for office. And you may not be ready to run in 2022, but you might be ready to run in 2024. So please do, or 2023. When we have some state constitutional offices open. So please do apply for Emerge Kentucky. Then I'll also add, and Councilwoman Ward-Pugh knows this, serve on a board or commission. Yeah. If running for office is not for you, serve on a board or commission. We need much better representation in our local boards and commissions. There is a lot of work that's been done on Metro Council to try to make those boards and commissions more reflective of our community. But we need folks who don't have positions or titles. We need folks who aren't connected and have financial means. We need folks who are out at Injustice Square Park protesting every day for justice for Breonna Taylor to serve on boards and commissions, because we need to have different perspectives. So please consider serving on a board or commission here in Louisville.
Yeah. So I'm going to segue into a question from the public that is participating. This is really exciting. And one of them has written in the chat, would the panelists comment on the amendments on the ballot? This is really important. important.
I'm happy to start, and then I imagine Leader Jenkins will have quite a bit to add. So there are 3 ballot amendments, and I had a Facebook Live about one last week, and then last night had an Instagram Live about another. So one is the tax levy question for Jefferson County Public Schools to levy an additional tax on people here in Jefferson County to help support our public school system, for example, to make sure that our kids have new school buildings. There are school buildings that have been around since the 50s that have never been modified. So we got to make sure that our kids have school buildings. We got to make sure that they have the resources that they need to be able to matriculate through K through 12. So that's one question that's on the ballot. And of course, there are some people who are trying to fight that question. And then the other one that I had an Instagram Live about last night with an attorney who was a former prosecutor, it was around the question, the constitutional amendment number 2, around extending the terms of office for Commonwealth's attorney, currently that is Tom Wine, and district court judges, and also licensure for judges. And so their terms of service would go from 6 years to 8 years. So that's something that folks need to be thinking about, whether or not you want these judges to be serving in office for 8 years. That's a long time to be able to hold someone accountable. But the licensure question, the attorney felt like, yeah, that's fair, that you would want someone to have 8 years of experience as an attorney before they ran for judge. So those are the 2 that I feel like I can speak to. The third one, basically Marcys Law, I have strong feelings about, so I'll pause.
Anybody else that would like to comment?
Well, I'll say a little bit about Marcys Law. I'm feeling a little, I don't know what the word is for this. I did vote for Marcys Law to put it on the ballot. I know that it was on the ballot 2 years ago, and about 80% of Kentuckians voted for it, but was taken off. It was the votes. It did not pass because there was a court case because of the wording that was on the ballot. Really didn't tell you much about what it is. It is would write a victim's. Lord, I'm having a hard time thinking of that. Rights for victims into the Constitution, and defense attorneys are against it. People that work with victims are for it. I personally, even though I voted for it, to put it on the ballot because there were some really bad things that could have been on the ballot that I really, really didn't like. So it was kind of a strategic vote for me. I worked as a victim advocate for many, many years. I support rights of victims to be heard in court. I think that's better done in the statutes than in the Constitution. So, but vote your conscience on that one.
Yeah. I don't have anything.
Well, I am being told that I should start wrapping up. We're very excited, though, that people are engaging. There is one more question, and we may be over time, but I think since it's Facebook time, Facebook Live, we can just continue for, and I will. So, how do you feel? And this is an important question for me, of course. Do you feel the arts and politics can more successfully interact to engage and mobilize voters?
All you have to say is Hamilton.
That's right.
How many people got excited about government and politics because they went to see Hamilton? Yes, I think, the arts play a role in so many areas of our lives. And I think politics is just one of it. I think about some of the things that, opened my eyes. To Kill a Mockingbird. There are so many works that reflect government and politics in good and bad. Like right now, I'm currently rewatching The West Wing because it makes me feel better about things.
Right. Really. Yeah, is it possible to wear out that on Netflix? Because if it is, I've already done it. Yeah, no, the arts and politics should be gentle, and they should be in our face. They should be as expressive or subtle as the artist uses or chooses to use. A couple of things come to mind, particularly this year. A ballot box, the ballot box initiative that Skylar Smith and Sarah Lindgren were part of. There were 7 people who were chosen for their art piece to provide something about what it means to vote, or the ballot box. And as it turns out, I can't think of Brianna's last name, Maddie Jones's granddaughter.
Harlan.
Yes, thank you. She was one of the 7 that were chosen. And so right now, even as we speak, even though Metro Hall is closed, there is a great art exhibit in Metro Hall that once we open back up after COVID, the public will be able to see those 7 pieces in this public building, which are just stunning. The other thing that the Centennial Committee did was we had a poster contest for the Centennial celebration this year, and it had to include the 55th anniversary this year also of the passage of the Voting Rights Act. And so we had 3 categories: a professional, collegiate, and a high school. And I mean, they just are phenomenal. And so we're working on reproducing those and being able to get those out there. And the last one is Women's Equality Day. If you did not see the piece that Hannah Drake did, that she was commissioned by the Fraser to do for Women's Equality Day this year, you have got to go to the FraserHistoryMuseum.org, I believe, and go through women's suffrage or Women Vote 100 and get to that video, or go to Office for Women's Facebook page, and you can see it there. It is powerful. It is art as I never imagined, and I will never be able to let go of it because it was so powerful and so. I mean, it's. I mean, art, people who are artists and had that imagination and that gift, please keep it coming, especially where politics are concerned.
Yeah, and I feel like I grew up with art and politics being connected. I was a child of the 80s, and hip hop and rap for me have always been political. I would hear about a politician that someone spoke of in their rap, and I would do my research to find out who was that. And so if it wasn't for these hip hop artists who, I clung to for, just entertainment, but also education and knowledge, there's some things that I might not have known. And even, today at the state level, I look at the Kentucky Foundation for Women and the artists that it's lifting up, and many of them are connecting arts to politics and culture and social issues. And then looking for Lilith has always done that work. Yeah. The shirt, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York, that fire, and bringing up the issues of labor and women organizing for their rights at work, and the work that they did around Rubbertown and educating people about environmental justice and environmental racism was so educational and powerful. And today, right now, when I look at the movement for Black lives and how artists have shown up and at Injustice Square Park downtown have just created amazing, beautiful images for everyone to be able to pay tribute to Breonna Taylor and to her family. That is the power of art. And we must continue to use art as a way to educate, to inspire, to motivate, and to contribute to movements.
Yeah.
And I think, thank you so much Somebody's phone is ringing, and I think we're Shannon. Thank you. She's back with us. She said she's been nodding all along.
Yes, I wish you could have seen me nodding vigorously. Panelists and Mari, here's Jennifer too. We are so grateful for your sharing of your experience with us tonight and with the community on Facebook. I have learned a great deal and been inspired hearing you speak this evening. So thank you.
So have I. Thank you so much.
Honored to be a part. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for all the hard work you're doing on behalf of those who don't typically have a voice in the halls of government. Thank you.
And Facebook family, tuning next week for episode 5, War, Disease, and Defeat. We're going to delve into World War I and the pandemic of 1918 and how they affected the fight for the vote. So it's a feel-good episode. Yeah, next Wednesday at 7:20 will be our next episode of From Bardstown to Broadway, The Road to Votes for Women.
Thank you.
Bye.